The Valkyrie High Council met in their great chamber, a vast space carved from living crystal that had taken 10,000 years to grow. The Supreme Matriarch sat upon her throne of bone and metal, surrounded by her advisors and war leaders. They had gathered to celebrate their victory over the human colony. But the mood had shifted since the strange message arrived. Ambassador Linda Shaw stood before them, small and fragile among the towering insectoid forms. She wore simple diplomatic robes and carried no weapons. To the Valkyrie, she looked like prey that had wandered into a nest of predators. "I bring a message from the United Earth Council," Linda said, her voice calm and clear. "You have 72 standard hours to respond." The Supreme Matriarch clicked her mandibles in amusement. Her compound eyes reflected Linda's image 1,000 times over. "Speak your message, little creature. We are curious what demands the humans think they can make." Linda pulled out a small device and read from it carefully. "The United Earth Council offers the Valkyrie Dominion one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. You will return all human remains for proper burial. You will hand over every individual responsible for planning and executing the attack on New Eden. You will submit to tribunal justice for war crimes against humanity." Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Valkyrie war leaders clacked their claws together in mockery. Even the advisors, usually solemn and cautious, joined in the derision. Surrender? The Supreme Matriarch rose from her throne, her massive form casting shadows across the floor. "You come to our homeworld, to the heart of our empire, and you demand surrender? Your species has fewer than 40 combat vessels. We have thousands. Your military is designed for defense. Ours is designed for conquest." She moved closer to Linda, her mandibles opening to reveal rows of sharp teeth. "We destroyed your colony because you annoyed us. Because your species talks too much about peace and cooperation. Because you needed to learn your place in the galaxy." The matriarch's voice dropped to a hiss. "Return to your people and tell them to prepare for extinction. We will come for your other colonies soon. And when we are finished, humanity will exist only as a memory and a warning to other young species." Linda did not flinch. She did not step back. She simply nodded, as if the matriarch had confirmed something she already knew. "I will relay your response," she said quietly. "For what it's worth, I argued against what comes next. I spent my entire career believing that all species were capable of reason, of mercy. I thought that if we just kept trying, eventually even the Valkyrie would see the value of peace." She met the matriarch's compound eyes with her own. "I was wrong about your species, but you were also wrong about mine. We didn't limit our weapons because we couldn't build them. We limited them because we were afraid of what we might become if we used them." Linda turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "You've taken that fear away from us." The doors closed behind her, and the Valkyrie Council erupted in discussion. Some dismissed the humans' words as empty threats. Others, older and more cautious, felt a strange unease. There had been something in the ambassador's voice, something that sounded almost like pity far from Valkyrie space. Commander Victor Lane coordinated the largest military operation in human history. He stood in the command center of the Stalwart Hope, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the position of every human asset. The hunter-killer drones had been deployed weeks ago, slipping through Valkyrie space in perfect silence. Millions of them now waited in asteroid fields and gas clouds and the dark spaces between stars. Each one carried a fraction of the terrible weapons humanity had hidden, waiting for the signal to activate. 72 hours, Victor murmured, watching the countdown. More mercy than they deserve. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Karen Torres, stood beside him. She was young, barely 30, but the events of the past weeks had aged her. Her brother had been a doctor on New Eden, Do you think they'll surrender? She asked. Victor shook his head slowly. No, they're too proud. Too certain of their superiority. They've conquered 11 species. They think they understand how this works. Then why give them the chance? Because we need to be able to tell ourselves we tried. Because we need to know, when we do what we're about to do, that we gave them every opportunity to avoid it. Victor's voice was heavy with something that might have been sorrow. We're about to become something we never wanted to be. The least we can do is make sure it was necessary. The Valkyrie spent the next 72 hours preparing for war. They recalled their fleets from across the Empire. They armed their orbital platforms and activated their planetary shields. They sent messages to their allies, boasting about how they would crush the upstart humans and divide their colonies among themselves. They expected a battle. They expected the humans to come at them with their pitiful fleet and be destroyed. They expected victory. What they got was silence. When the deadline passed, nothing happened. No human ships appeared. No messages came. The Valkyrie commanders checked their sensors repeatedly, searching for any sign of attack. Perhaps they realized the hopelessness of their situation, the Supreme Matriarch announced. Perhaps they have accepted their fate. But deep in the Valkyrie communication networks, something was changing. Relays that had functioned for centuries suddenly went dark. Sensor stations stopped responding. Patrol ships sent routine reports and then simply vanished, leaving no trace. Admiral Cole watched from the constellation as the Valkyrie Empire began to go blind. The hunter-killer drones were doing their work perfectly, cutting the enemy's eyes and ears without revealing themselves. Phase 1 complete, her tactical officer reported. They've lost 60% of their early warning network. Their command structure is fragmenting. Patricia nodded. Begin Phase 2. Send in the nightfall. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Captain Greg Palmer received his orders. He looked at his crew, at the young faces that had become hard and determined over the past weeks. This is it, he said simply. Remember New Eden. Remember why we're here. And remember that what we do today, we do so that no human child ever dies this way. Again, the Nightfall activated its fold space drive and vanished. It reappeared directly above the Valkyrie. Homeworld. 800 warships immediately moved to intercept, their weapons charging. The planetary defense grid came online, targeting the single human vessel that had dared to enter their space. Greg Palmer opened a channel that broadcast on every frequency the Valkyrie used. This is Captain Palmer of the Earth Defense Vessel. Nightfall, he said calmly. This is humanity's response to New Eden. The Valkyrie fleet commander laughed at the lone ship facing his armada. He gave the order to fire. Greg smiled. You believed that slaughtering our civilians would break us. Instead, you have united us. You wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. The Nightfall's primary weapon began to charge, energy readings climbing to levels the Valkyrie sensors could barely comprehend. Class dismissed. The news spread across the galaxy like fire on 100 different worlds. Beings of every shape and size gather around screens and communication devices to watch the footage. Human ships rising from the ocean. Council vessels exploding in the sky. A species that should have been conquered forever, turning the tables on their masters, thought it was impossible. Everyone knew it was impossible. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. No one defeated the Council, and yet the evidence was undeniable. High Arbiter Zeleth Ra called an emergency session of the Galactic Council for the first time in 600 years. The great chamber on the capital world of Valor Prime filled with representatives from all 12 member species. They argued and shouted and demanded answers that no one could give. This is an embarrassment, Zelethra declared. Her crystal skin glowed with barely contained fury. A primitive species has destroyed our patrol fleet and captured our personnel. This cannot stand. Ambassador Tith of the Delori raised one of his appendages. The Delori were an aquatic species, known for their careful thinking and peaceful nature. They had joined the Council centuries ago and had always been uncomfortable with its methods. Perhaps we should consider negotiation, Tith suggested carefully. The humans have proven themselves capable. Perhaps they deserve a place at our table as equals rather than as servants. Zalthar's laughter echoed through the chamber. Equals? They are insects. They have won a single battle through trickery and surprise. The Grand Fleet will crush them and restore proper order. We have lost 47 vessels, Tith pointed out. 12,000 personnel. The humans achieved this with technology they developed in secret while we occupied their world. Does that not concern you? It concerns me that we underestimated them, Zalthra admitted. A mistake we will not make again. The Grand Fleet will depart within the week. 3,000 of our finest warships. This time, there will be no survivors. The vote was swift. Only Tith and 2 other representatives opposed the action. The Grand Fleet would destroy Earth and serve as a lesson to any other species that might dare to resist the Council's rule on Earth. Humanity prepared for the battle of its existence. Admiral Patricia Vance stood in the command center of the newly completed battle station Armstrong. It had been built in secret over the past 2 years, hidden in the asteroid belt where Council sensors never thought to look. Now it served as the headquarters for Earth's defense. Around her, hundreds of officers monitored screens showing the status of every human ship, every weapon system, every defensive installation. The fleet had grown to 600 vessels, but it was still outnumbered 5 to 1. They're entering the system, reported Samantha Brooks from the sensor station. 3,042 ships in standard Council formation. Arrowhead pattern with carriers in the rear. Patricia studied the display. The Council formation was textbook perfect, exactly what they had used in every conquest for the past 3,000 years. They were confident. They believed their numbers would be enough. They learned nothing from the first battle, Patricia said. Good. Deploy the Hades Protocol. The Hades Protocol was Grace Kim's masterpiece. Hundreds of automated weapons platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt, each one equipped with the same frequency adaptation technology that had destroyed the patrol fleet. They had been placed months ago, invisible to Council sensors, waiting for this moment. Platforms armed and ready, Grace reported from her station. Awaiting your order. Patricia waited. She watched the Council fleet advance deeper into the asteroid belt, completely unaware of the trap they were walking into. She thought about everyone on Earth who was counting on them. She thought about her children, who she had sent to a shelter in the Rocky Mountains. She thought about all the other species the Council had conquered, all the worlds that had been stripped bare, all the people who had died as slaves. Fire, she said. The asteroid belt came alive. Weapons platforms that had looked like ordinary rocks suddenly revealed their true nature. Beams of energy lanced out from every direction, each one finding its target with perfect accuracy. Council ships exploded by the dozens, their shields useless against weapons that adapted faster than they could respond. The Council commanders screamed for new orders. Their formation broke apart as captains tried to escape the ambush. But the platforms were everywhere, and their targeting systems never missed. Enemy fleet is in disarray, Samantha reported. They've lost 400 ships in the first 3 minutes. Press the advantage, Patricia ordered. All ships, engage. The human fleet emerged from behind asteroids and moons where they had been hiding. They hit the confused Council forces from every angle, their adapted weapons cutting through shields like they were made of paper. On the Council flagship Divine Authority, Fleet Admiral Zalethka watched his force being torn apart. He was the High Arbiter's own son, chosen to lead this mission because his mother believed it would be an easy victory. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "We outnumber them. We are the Council." His tactical officer's voice was shaking. "Admiral, we have lost 800 ships. The humans are targeting our carriers. If we lose them, we cannot retreat." Zelivka made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All ships, fall back. Emergency jump to Council space." "But Admiral, the mission is over. We cannot win this battle. Save what ships we can." The retreat was chaos. Council vessels tried to disengage, but the human fleet pursued them without mercy. Every ship that slowed down to charge its jump drive became a target. Every ship that tried to cover another became a sacrifice. 4 hours after it began, the Battle of Seoul was over. The Council had entered the system with over 3,000 ships. Less than 1,000 escaped. The rest were destroyed, their debris spreading through the asteroid belt like a metal graveyard. Patricia Vance watched the last Council ship disappear into hyperspace. Around her, her officers were cheering, hugging each other, some of them crying with relief. They had done the impossible twice, but Patricia did not celebrate. She understood what came next. "Send word to Earth," she said quietly. "Tell them we won, and tell them to prepare. The Council will not accept this defeat. They will come again, and next time, they will bring everything they have." The message reached Earth within hours. Once again, humanity celebrated. Once again, they danced in the streets and waved their flags and believed that the worst was over. Danny Liu did not celebrate. He stood in his office, staring at a star map showing the territory of the Galactic Council. Hundreds of systems, thousands of worlds, resources beyond anything Earth could match. "They'll send more," he said to Maria Santos, who stood beside him. "They have to. If they let us win, their whole empire falls apart. Every conquered species will see what we've done and wonder if they can do the same." Maria nodded. "Then what do we do?" Danny thought for a long moment. "We don't wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them. We show the galaxy that the Council can be beaten." "With what? 600 ships against an empire?" Danny smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had already accepted what needed to be done. "We don't need to defeat their empire. We just need to break their myth. The Council rules through fear. They've convinced the galaxy that resistance is impossible. We've proven it's not. Now we need to spread that message." He pulled up a new display showing the locations of Council shipyards, supply depots, and communication stations. "We hit them where it hurts. We free their slaves. We arm their subjects. And we show every conquered species in the galaxy that they don't have to live in chains." Maria stared at the map for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow." The war was just beginning. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the Council was afraid. And fear, Danny knew, was how empires fell. The Velthari High Council did not take the news well. 5,000 more warriors were loaded onto transport ships and sent to New Kansas. Along with them came observer Kethril, a scientist who had spent 30 years studying other species. Kethril was different from most Velthari. He did not glow with the bright colors of a warrior. His light was soft and pale, the color of someone who spent more time thinking than fighting. When he arrived at the command camp, Commander Varak looked at him with open disgust. "I do not need scientists," Varak said. "I need soldiers who follow orders." "The High Council disagrees," Kethril replied calmly. "You have lost 400 warriors in a single day. That has never happened before. They want to know why." Varak's glow shifted to an angry orange. "The humans fight without honor. They hide and run like prey animals. They do not stand and face us like proper enemies. Tethril pulled out a small device and projected images into the air. They showed humans throughout history. Humans hunting with simple spears. Humans fighting wars with swords and shields. Humans building cities and machines and ships that crossed the stars. Do you know how humans hunt? Kethral asked. I do not care how they hunt. You should. Kethral changed the image to show a human chasing an animal across a flat plain. Their ancestors did not have claws or fangs. They were not fast enough to catch prey in a sprint. So they developed a different method. They would follow an animal for hours, sometimes days. They never stopped. They never gave up. Eventually, the animal would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would kill it. Vorak stared at the image. What is your point? My point is that humans do not think about war the way we do. We seek quick victories. We overwhelm our enemies with superior force. But humans think in longer terms. They are willing to lose battles if it means winning the war. They are willing to suffer and wait and endure. Nonsense, Vorak said. They are soft creatures with no natural weapons. We simply need more soldiers. Kethral's glow dimmed with something like sadness. I hope you are right, Commander. I truly do. The second assault began 3 days later. Vorak had changed his tactics. Instead of searching buildings one at a time, he ordered his soldiers to destroy them. Massive plasma cannons reduced entire blocks to rubble. If the humans wanted to hide, he would eliminate their hiding places. Captain Danny Holt watched the destruction from a hillside outside the city. Maria Santos stood beside him, her face tight with anger. They are burning everything, she said. The school, the hospital, my apartment building. Danny put a hand on her shoulder. Buildings can be rebuilt. People cannot. We need to change our approach. He called a meeting with his officers that night. They gathered in a cave system that the original colonists had used for storage during the early years of settlement. The Velthari did not know about these caves. They had not been on any maps the aliens captured. The enemy is learning, Danny said. They are destroying our cover. We cannot fight them in the city anymore. Lieutenant Pete Crawford raised his hand. Sir, if we cannot fight in the city, where do we fight? Danny pointed to a map on the wall. It showed the forests and mountains that surrounded the settlement area. We spread out. Small groups, no more than 20 people each. We hit them when they move between positions. We attack their supply lines. We make them afraid to sleep. Sergeant Lisa Marsh spoke up. She had a bandage on her forehead from a close call the day before. We do not have enough weapons for a long fight. Our ammunition will run out. Then we take theirs, Danny said. Velthari weapons can be modified to work with human hands. I have engineers working on it already. The new tactics began the next morning. The Velthari had set up a supply route between their landing zone and the occupied city. Trucks carrying food, weapons, and medical supplies traveled this route 3 times a day. They had guards, but not many. Why would they need guards? They controlled the area. Kevin Burke and his squad waited in the trees beside the road. There were 8 of them, hidden in positions that had taken them hours to prepare. Leaves and mud covered their bodies. They did not move. They barely breathed. The supply convoy appeared around a bend in the road. 2 trucks and 4 guards on foot. The Velthari soldiers walked with their weapons lowered, talking among themselves. They were relaxed, comfortable. They had no idea what was about to happen. Kevin aimed at the lead guard and waited for the signal. Lisa Marsh fired the first shot from her position on a small hill. The lead guard dropped. Before the others could react, the rest of the squad opened fire. In less than 10 seconds, all 4 guards were down. The trucks stopped, but there was no one to defend them. Kevin and 2 others ran forward and climbed into the vehicles. The alien controls were confusing at first, but they had practiced on captured equipment. Within a minute, both trucks were moving again, this time heading toward the human positions in the mountains. That night, Danny Holt looked at the supplies they had captured: weapons, ammunition, medical equipment. Enough to keep fighting for another week. "Good work," he told Lisa when she returned to camp. "Any losses?" "One wounded. Private Cooper got hit in the leg. She will be okay." Danny nodded. "The enemy will increase their security after this. We need to hit more targets before they can adapt." Over the next 2 weeks, the humans struck again and again. They attacked supply convoys. They sabotaged equipment. They set traps on roads and in buildings. The Valkyrie could not move anywhere without fear of ambush. Commander Vorak lost more soldiers to these small attacks than he had lost in the initial battle. His warriors were exhausted. They could not sleep because the humans attacked at night. They could not relax because danger could come from any direction. Cathryle visited the command center and found Vorak staring at a map covered in red marks. Each mark showed where a human attack had occurred. "They are everywhere," Vorak said. His voice was tired. "We control the city, but we cannot control anything else. Every time we send soldiers into the wilderness, some of them do not come back." "I warned you," Cathryle said. "The humans do not fight to win quickly. They fight to make you tired. They fight to break your spirit." Vorak turned to look at him. "What do you suggest?" "Send a message to the council. Tell them the truth. This war will not be won with soldiers alone. We need to understand the humans better. We need to know why they fight so hard for this world." Vorak's glow shifted to a dull gray, the color of defeat. "The council will not listen. They will simply send more warriors." "Then more warriors will die," Cathryle said, "and we will be no closer to victory." In the mountains, Danny Holt sat by a small fire with his officers. They had won another day, but he knew the real test was still coming. The Valkyrie would not give up easily. They would send more soldiers, more weapons, more resources. The humans had to be ready. "Get some rest," Danny told his people. "Tomorrow we start training the new volunteers." More colonists had been joining the fight every day. Farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers. Regular people who had never held a weapon before. They were scared, but they were also angry. This was their home, and they would not let it go without a fight. Danny looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, more Valkyrie ships were on their way. He did not know how many. He did not know if his people could survive what was coming, but they would try. That was all any of them could do. Observer Cathryle could not sleep. Every night he lay in his quarters and thought about the humans. Every day he watched more Valkyrie soldiers die fighting an enemy they did not understand. The war had been going on for 3 months now, and there was no end in sight. He had studied humans before coming to this world. He had watched their broadcasts, read their books, analyzed their history. But none of that had prepared him for the reality of fighting them. These were not the weak, soft creatures the council had described. These were something else entirely. Something dangerous. Cathryle made a decision. He would go to the humans himself. He would talk to them. Maybe, if he could understand them, he could find a way to end this war before both sides destroyed each other. He sent a message under a flag of truce. To his surprise, the humans agreed to meet. The meeting place was an old warehouse between the human and Valkyrie lines. It had been hit by weapons fire many times, and holes in the roof let in the afternoon sunlight. Cathryle arrived first and waited, his glow dim with nervousness. Captain Danny Holt came alone. He walked into the warehouse with his hands visible, showing he carried no weapons. He was thinner than Cathryle had expected, with dark circles under his eyes from too many nights without sleep. But his eyes were sharp and alert, watching everything. You wanted to talk, Danny said. So talk. Cathrall studied the human for a long moment. This man had killed hundreds of Volturi warriors. He had turned a simple colony defense force into an army that had stopped the mightiest military in the galaxy. And yet he looked like he could be anyone. A farmer, a teacher, a father. I do not understand your species, Cathrall said finally. I have studied you for 30 years, and I still do not understand. Danny sat down on a broken crate. What is there to understand? This world. Cathrall gestured around them. It is not your home planet. Your species evolved somewhere else. You came here only 3 generations ago. Why do you fight so hard for it? Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a dried flower, pressed flat and preserved in clear plastic. My grandmother gave this to me when I was a boy, Danny said. She found it growing wild near the first settlement, about 50 years after the colony started. It was the first flower that grew naturally on this world. Not planted, not engineered. Just a seed that found its way into the soil and decided to grow. He held up the flower so Cathrall could see it. It was small and blue, with 5 petals arranged in a simple pattern. Do you know what she told me? She said that when she saw this flower, she cried. She had spent her whole life trying to make this world livable. She had buried her husband and 2 children who died from the harsh conditions. She had worked every day until her body broke down. And then one morning she walked outside and saw this flower, and she knew it had all been worth it. Danny put the flower back in his pocket. That is why we fight. Not because this world is our home planet, but because we made it our home. We earned it. Every tree, every field, every building was put here by people who sacrificed everything. Cathrall's glow shifted to a soft purple, the color of deep thought. But you cannot win. The Council will send more ships, more soldiers. Eventually, your numbers will be too small to continue. Maybe, Danny admitted. But we will keep fighting anyway. Why? Why die for a world you cannot keep? Danny stood up and walked to one of the holes in the wall. He looked out at the ruined city beyond. Let me tell you a story, he said. About 200 years ago, back on Earth, there was a small group of soldiers defending a mission building called the Alamo. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. They had no hope of winning. They could have retreated and saved themselves. What happened to them? They stayed. They fought. They all died. Danny turned to face Cathrall. But their sacrifice inspired others. More people joined the fight. And in the end, their side won the war. You would die just to inspire others? Danny shook his head. No, I would die because running away is not who we are. Humans do not give up. We do not surrender. Even when we know we cannot win, we keep fighting because that is what makes us human. Cathrall was silent for a long time. His glow shifted through several colors as he processed what he had heard. I thought humans were weak because you have no natural weapons, he said finally. But I was wrong. Your weapon is something else. It is your refusal to accept defeat. It is your willingness to sacrifice everything for something you believe in. Now you understand, Danny said. Cathrall moved toward the door, then stopped. I will make a report to the Council. I will tell them what I have learned. I do not know if they will listen, but I will try. Why? Why help us? The alien turned back, his glow a pale shade that Danny could not read. Because this war is wrong. The Volturi have conquered many species, but we have never faced anyone like you. If we continue this fight, we will win eventually. But the cost will be enormous. I'm not sure victory is worth that cost. After Cathrall left, Danny stood alone in the warehouse for a long time. He did not know if the alien would really help them. He did not know if anything would change. But for the first time in months, he felt something like hope. He returned to his camp in the mountains and called a meeting with his officers. "The Valkyrie Observer wants to negotiate peace," he told them. "But I do not think the council will agree. We need to prepare for the worst." Lieutenant Pete Crawford looked worried. "Sir, our supplies are running low again, and the enemy has learned to protect their convoys better. We cannot steal from them like we used to." "I know." Danny pulled up a map on his display. "That is why we are going to try something new. We are going to attack their main base." The room went silent. Maria Santos spoke first. "Sir, that is suicide. They have 20,000 soldiers there." "Not a direct attack," Danny said. "A raid, quick in and out. We destroy their supply storage and retreat before they can respond." Lisa Marsh studied the map. "It could work. If we time it right, we could cause serious damage." "We will need volunteers," Danny said. "This mission is dangerous. I will not order anyone to go." He looked around the room at the faces of his officers. They were tired, wounded, scared, but not one of them looked away. "I will go," Lisa said. "Me too," added Tevin. One by one, every officer in the room volunteered. Danny felt a warmth in his chest. These people had followed him through impossible odds. They had lost friends and family. They had seen their homes destroyed. And still, they were willing to fight. "All right," he said. "Let us plan this carefully. We only get one chance." The raid was set for 3 nights later. 50 of the best human fighters would strike the Valkyrie base, destroy what they could, and escape into the darkness. It was a desperate plan, but they were in a desperate situation. Danny spent the night before the attack writing letters to the families of his soldiers. If things went wrong, he wanted them to know how brave their loved ones had been. He hoped he would not have to send those letters. But he prepared them anyway. That was what leaders did. The raid on the Valkyrie base changed everything. 50 human soldiers moved through the darkness like shadows. They had painted their faces and covered their equipment to prevent any reflection. Lisa Marsh led the way, finding paths through the enemy defenses that no one thought existed. The Valkyrie had built their base on flat ground, thinking it was easier to defend. They were wrong. The flatness meant there was no high ground for lookouts. The darkness meant their thermal sensors could not tell the difference between humans and the warm rocks around them. The humans reached the supply depot without being detected. Kevin Burke and his team planted explosives on the fuel tanks. Another team targeted the ammunition storage. A third group went after the communication equipment. At exactly midnight, the charges went off. The explosions lit up the night sky. Fuel tanks burst into flames that rose 100 meters into the air. Ammunition cooked off in chains of smaller explosions that lasted for hours. The communication tower fell and crushed a row of transport vehicles. In the chaos, the humans disappeared back into the wilderness. The Valkyrie lost more supplies in that single night than they had lost in the entire war so far. Commander Vorak stood in the ruins the next morning, his glow a dull gray of despair. How? He asked no one in particular. How do they keep doing this? Cathrall watched from a distance. He had sent his report to the council 3 days ago. He had told them the truth about the humans. He had recommended withdrawal. As expected, they had ignored him. Now, they were sending more soldiers. 100,000 this time. The largest invasion force in Valkyrie history. When the new forces arrived, the war entered a new phase. The Valkyrie spread across the entire colony, occupying every city and town. They set up checkpoints on every road. They patrolled the forests with drones and sensors. It did not matter. The humans kept fighting. They fought in the cities, using tunnels and hidden rooms that the Valkyrie never found. They fought in the forests, using knowledge of the land that the aliens could not match. They fought in space. where colonists had converted mining ships into makeshift warships that struck Valkyrie supply lines and escaped before anyone could respond. Private Kevin Burke died 6 months into the war. He was holding a bridge while civilians escaped from an occupied town. 20 Valkyrie soldiers came at him, and he stopped them all. His body was found the next day, still holding his weapon, surrounded by dead enemies. His last radio transmission was simple: "Tell my mom I did not run." Sergeant Lisa Marsh lost her arm to a plasma blast during a rescue mission. She spent 3 days in a hidden hospital, then demanded to return to combat. The doctors gave her a simple mechanical replacement. She named it Payback and went right back to fighting. Lieutenant Maria Santos coordinated the orbital defense until the station she was on was destroyed by Valkyrie warships. She ejected an escape pod and floated in space for 2 days before a patrol ship found her. When they brought her aboard, her first words were, "What did I miss? Are we still winning?" Captain Danny Holt never stopped leading. He never stopped fighting. He moved from camp to camp, always one step ahead of the enemy. He planned attacks that seemed impossible and won battles that should have been losses. The Valkyrie put a bounty on his head worth more than most planets. He did not care. There was work to do. The war lasted 2 years. 2 years of blood and fire and death. The Valkyrie sent wave after wave of soldiers, and the humans cut them down. Not because the humans were stronger, not because they had better weapons, but because they simply would not stop. Observer Kethril watched it all. He documented every battle, every tactic, every moment of human stubbornness. He sent report after report to the council, begging them to reconsider. Finally, after 2 years, they listened. High Arbiter Zolthan called an emergency session of the council. His glow was dim, almost invisible. He looked old in a way that Valkyrie rarely showed. "We send our finest warriors to defeat the humans," he announced to the gathered representatives. None of them returned victorious. Many did not return at all. He displayed the casualty numbers. 60,000 Valkyrie soldiers dead. Another 40,000 wounded too badly to fight. The greatest military force in the galaxy had been broken against 8 million farmers and builders who refused to give up their home. "I move that we seek terms of peace with the human colonies," Zolthan continued. "Not as conquerors, but as equals." The vote was unanimous. When the news reached New Kansas, Danny Holt was sitting in a cave that had served as his command center for the past 6 months. Lisa Marsh brought him the message, her mechanical arm clicking softly as she moved. "They are surrendering," she said. "The Valkyrie want peace." Danny read the message 3 times before he believed it. Then he put his head in his hands and cried. He cried for all the people they had lost. He cried for all the destruction they had suffered. He cried because it was finally over. The peace ceremony took place a month later, in the ruins of the colony's original capital. Valkyrie representatives came under a flag of truce and met with human leaders. They signed documents promising never to attack human worlds again. They agreed to pay compensation for the damage they had caused. Kethril was there as an observer. After the ceremony, he approached Danny Holt. "I want to understand something," Kethril said. "You were always outnumbered. You were always outgunned. At any point, you could have surrendered and saved thousands of lives. Why did you keep fighting?" Danny looked at him for a long moment. Then he pointed to a spot across the ruined square. Workers were there, clearing debris. In the middle of the destruction, someone had planted a small tree. It was barely more than a sapling, thin and fragile. "You see that tree?" Danny said. Someone planted it while the fighting was still going on. While buildings were burning and people were dying, someone took the time to put a seed in the ground. Kethril looked at the tree. "Why? Because that is who we are. We build. We grow. We make things better. Even in the worst times, We plant trees we might never sit under. Even when everything is falling apart, we think about the future. Danny turned back to the alien. You asked why we kept fighting. That is why. Because giving up means giving up on the future. And humans never give up on the future. Kethral was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, his glow shifted to a warm yellow, the Vulthary color of respect. I think, he said, that the galaxy has much to learn from your species. Danny smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Maybe, or maybe we just need to learn to plant more trees. 5 years later, New Kansas was thriving again. The cities had been rebuilt, bigger and better than before. The forests had regrown. Children played in streets that had once been battlefields. Captain Danny Holt, now retired, stood in a park in the center of the capital. The tree that had been planted during the war was tall now, providing shade for a memorial to those who had died. His granddaughter ran up to him, laughing. She was 5 years old, born after the war ended. She had never known fear or hunger or the sound of explosions. "Grandpa, tell me the story again," she said. "The one about how we won." Danny picked her up and held her close. He looked at the tree, at the memorial, at the peaceful sky above. "Once upon a time," he said, "some very powerful aliens came to take our home. They thought we would be easy to beat because we were small and had no claws or armor. But they were wrong," his granddaughter said, having heard this story many times before. Yes, they were wrong, because they did not understand the most important thing about humans. What is that? Danny smiled and pointed at the tree. We never give up. No matter how hard things get, no matter how impossible it seems, we keep fighting. We keep building. We keep planting trees. His granddaughter nodded seriously, as if this was the most important lesson in the world. Maybe it was Dot in the distance. A Vulthary trade ship passed overhead, one of many that now visited human worlds in peace. The war was over. The future had begun, and the tree kept growing toward the sky.